Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first edition of our 2025 TEP webinar series. We are super delighted to have you join us today. My name is Zino, and I'll be your host in today's session. And thank you so much for being here. We are super glad that you were able to join us today. Last year, we successfully hosted 9 webinars, which featured over 25 speakers from 8 African countries and reached more than 400 educators across Africa and beyond. And this year, we are super thrilled and excited to kick off with a special edition in commemoration of the 2025 International Day of Education. So our theme today is AI and education, exploring the possibilities for teaching, learning, and assessment, which aligns closely with the global conversation on artificial intelligence and its transformative role in education. So whilst we get settled into the conversation, this will be a great time to say that if you're just joining us, we are super excited to have you here once again. We'd like you to introduce yourself in the chat box by sharing your name, tell us your organization and the country you're joining from, and most importantly, what you hope to learn from today's conversation. I like to think that we all came here with one thing or two that we're looking forward to sharing or learning. So please tell us your name. I'll take that again, your organization, and what you intend to learn from today's conversation. It's also my pleasure to briefly introduce you to the NICE community, the National Innovation Collaborative for Education. NICE is a vibrant community of education innovators created by TEP Center, and NICE is dedicated to expanding access to quality education for all children. We engage our communities through various channels, which includes our monthly newsletter. We have our podcast, which is Education Unscripted. We also have our virtual and in-person meetups, like today's event. If you'd like to collaborate with us on all of these webinars, please send an email to nice@tepcenter.com. We also have EdMeet, which is our EdMeet series, which is a bridge builder event designed to provide a platform for education and other sector experts to collaborate for the purpose of synergizing to solve complex problems and strengthening access to quality education using their platforms. We have hosted 3 editions of EdMeets, and we plan to host the 4th edition of EdMeets in August this year. So please stay tuned and watch out for more information on that. We also have our flagship education convening, which is NEDIS. NEDIS is an annual education innovation summit organized and hosted by the Education Partnership Center. Over the past 7 editions, NEDIS has served as a platform for senior education stakeholders, innovators, researchers, policymakers, curriculum developers, and many others to engage in meaningful conversations and drive forward-thinking solutions for education in our continent. We are super thrilled to announce that the 8th edition of NEDIS would happen on March 5th, 2025, which is themed Skills Development for Workplace Readiness and Inclusion. This year's summit will also focus on equipping learners with the skills needed for the evolving world of work while ensuring inclusivity in education and employment. To register and learn more about NEDIS, please visit our website www.stepcenter.com/NEDIS. You can also join our mailing list to stay updated on all of these events. That being said, without further ado, we'll get right into the reason why we're here today. So our lineup of speakers today have a wealth of knowledge and expertise in today's topic. Let's meet them. Jude Asiedu is an educational tech consultant, school improvement advocate, and filmmaker at Edugitage EdTech Services Nigeria. His interests range from technology to entrepreneurship, and he's an experienced educational technologist, adept at designing and tailoring learning programs for organizations of all sizes and industries. He has over a decade of experience, which spans across the corporate, sector, non-profit, public sectors. And Jude also leverages robust instructional design, project management, and technical skills to enhance workplace learning. He is also a true believer in the power of educational technology to drive organizational performance. It's a pleasure to have you here. We also have Destiny, who is an expert in growth and innovation management. He currently works with Autogon AI as the head of growth, and he has been instrumental in driving innovation design with both multilateral and bilateral organizations like UNICEF, GIZ, GIF, and the World Bank. He is also adept at managing key stakeholders and partners towards achieving project goals and scaling innovations. He helps businesses and organizations recognize the importance of leveraging AI across industries to solve pressing challenges as they experience and ultimately deliver excellence. Thank you so much, Destiny, for being here. And we are super glad you're able to join us today. We also have Ezioma, who is a social development professional with expertise leading projects within the public health and education sector. She specializes in practical issues associated with research, survey and assessment design, state accountability, inclusive and participatory citizenship, community engagement, and development policies. She is also a member of the People's Action for Learning Network, POW Network, and have managed projects funded or in partnership with the international organizations, including Hewlett Foundation, British Council, MacArthur Foundation, amongst many others. Thank you so much, Ezioma, for being here with us today. And we also have our moderator, which is Santos Akilele. Santos is a seasoned professional dedicated to driving positive change in Africa through data science, communications, strategic decision making. He's also proficient in Python, data visualization tools, and AI. He excels in leveraging data for growth, efficiency, and impactful solutions. At Human Capital Africa, Santos also advances foundational literacy and numeracy while collaborating with government and partners committed to creating meaningful change. He also competed internationally in Taekwondo, representing Nigeria on the global stage. Thank you so much, Santos, for joining us today. And thanks to all our panelists for being here. I would like to say once again that we are currently live. Kindly invite your friends, your colleagues, because it's going to be an insightful conversation and we need to have them here. I'm excited to hand over to our moderator to steer today's conversation. Hi, Santos.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are listening from. And I think it promises to be a very refreshing conversation and enlightening at the same time. I hope we leave here with more answers than questions, and then more questions from those answers. Now, everyone in this room today knows that the growth that we have had in relation to the conversation around AI within the last 5 years is probably it's been way more dramatic than we've had in the last maybe 20 years before that. It's arguable, but I think I see it in that manner because the things that the office space feels like today, what the office space feels like today is way more different than what the office space felt like 2019. And it's even going to become more dramatic. I read somewhere that by 2027, majority of the coding jobs will be done by computers. And I do not know how best to emphasize how crazy that is. For someone who used to code when it was Java 7, SE7, and it felt like you had to be some special genius to learn how to code. We're being told that AI is going to do that in seconds. already doing that, but majority of that is going to be happening with AI. And there are many other industries that are going to be affected by this positively, of course, hopefully. So keeping that in mind, keeping the fact that AI is impacting lots of industries, there are self-driving cars, defense, cancer research. I would like to ask my panelists, what do you think is the future of teaching and learning, keeping this AI revolution in mind? And how close are we in Nigeria and across the continent, in relation to this conversation? I'll start with Destiny. I'd like to hear your thoughts. These are just introductory questions to water the ground before we go into the main objectives, because we have three objectives that we would like to discuss around today. So yeah, Destiny, and then when Destiny is done, Jude, and then after Jude is Yoma. I just want to hear your thoughts on what do you think the future of teaching and learning is, and how close are we in Nigeria and across the continent?
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Uh, this sounds what a very interesting question. I would start from where we are currently AI in it, right? So that's where we are, so that we can now to discuss what our next plans as per readiness and action of what we think the emerging technology into the education sector. First of all, one way I see artificial intelligence is going to change the way we do in our educational system and the learning system is personalized learning. Personalized learning in the sense that way back when I was to be in secondary school or primary school, we used to have different people want to learn differently, but our teacher then would use one approach to teach different people that want to learn differently. So it was a basic problem at that time. So the major problem. They failed to realize that there are people who learn by visuals, there are people who learn by storytelling, there are people who learn. So I think AI is also going to change the whole approach of learning by making it personalized and tailored to different kind of people, right? Another thing I think AI is going to do is administrative efficiency. We see it as a way that AI can already begin to automate results. We are going to automating marking of results tags, grading, scheduling of activities. AI is going to do all of those things so that the teachers can already start focusing on critical thinking and emotional support for the students, and also as well as mentorship for that student. So AI is going to administrative tasks. AI is also going to enhance engagement, right? In-depth research, in-depth engagement as to how you want to take your students to the next level of learning. And your question, as far as speaking in Nigeria, I would say well, we are slightly ready because we've made the check past around policies. Today, you would see there are a lot of conversation around the national AI strategy framework. There's also some Coda Africa that is coming out to support AI initiative in the education sector. However, there are also some infrastructure challenges that we have currently. Talk about power, talk about internet, talk about capacity building. Those are the challenges that could slow down the adoption and the readiness of AI in education. I will just stop there and pass the mic to my colleagues to finish.
So that was very concise, and I appreciate how quick you were. And I'm looking at the other two panelists with my eyes very strong on you. Let's take Destiny's approach so I don't come for you. I'm just playing. So I appreciate the speed, Destiny. I'll move to Jude. I'm happy to hear your thoughts, Jude, as well, on on the same question, right? And then I'll round off together everything we've said, so I don't interrupt anyone. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Uh, I would like to reiterate that this AI discussion has been part of my project since 2017, and I've actually had in-depth discussions about where AI should fit in classrooms. And I'm also against the idea that AI is going to take the jobs of teachers, like most people assume, because teaching and learning is a personalized thing, and you need humans to teach humans, right? The best AI can do is assistant or become a teaching assistant. And from the look of things, I still envisage that AI growth in education, or the AI role in teaching and learning, should be as an assistant. So a teacher having an AI assistant, right? Then you have a student having an AI assistant, right? So both assistants coming from AI can actually leverage data in classroom, because most times people believe AI just should automate everything, which is not wrong, but it's in context, because I also teach. In context of classroom, AI has to be very designed. It has to be designed to actually take data from classrooms, right? So that it can make analytics and give informed decisions. So I'm of the opinion or the idea that when introducing AI in classroom as a teaching assistant or as a teaching or a learning assistant, it should actually take the data for each classroom, because every classroom is different. Every school have their own unique way of teaching. So you can't use one AI to fit all. You just have to pick an aspect of your classroom that you want AI to improve and work on it. And it gives you analytics, it gives you recommendation, it gives you ideas on how to improve that your learning and teaching approach. So I'm looking at AI tutors as assistants, not taking over the teacher's role. And also an adaptive learning system where the AI looks at your peculiar situation in classroom and goes back, gives you analytics on the ways you should improve that classroom. So rather than you trying to compare your school with other schools in different parts of the world, every school, because of their learning materials, they just need AI to improve what they already have rather than making suggestions from what they don't have. So I look at AI as learning and teaching improvement and learning and teaching assistant for schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jude. And we're on a roll. I think I have the best panelists in the world. Such a lucky moderator. We have Izioma here who has a personal AI assistant beside her. Apologize on her behalf before she starts. But yes, please, Izioma, go on.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And to my co-panelists. I want to first of all say that I agree with Jude to say that even though AI has, made very significant strides in education, in fact, in all sectors, globally, I strongly believe that it's not, at least not anytime soon, going to take away going to take jobs, from teachers, or going to take away the essence of human connection in teaching and learning. And I say that first of all because you can't really take away when you think about teaching and learning and communication, you can't take away the power of human capacity. You can't take away the power of human creativity, rather. Here you're talking about innovation, motivation, you're talking about critical thinking, you're talking about imagination. I don't believe there's an AI tool yet. There might be, but I don't believe there's an AI tool yet that can teach our children how to imagine, make up stories and things like that. And also I want to touch on, looking back to look forward when it comes to AI. AI doesn't work without data. And so how I believe that where we're leaning towards in terms of work AI in the education space is to more or less improve the capacity of how we collect data, the type of data that we collect and evaluating this data. But in terms of applying the learnings that we're seeing, what the data is telling us, the future of education is still going to be focused, is still going to be centered around that human effects. And, there's so many things that the AI is teaching us, or where the AI can be applied these days. I think Destiny touched on it. You talk of personalized learning, adaptive learning. AI can do all of that. And then you have the capacity building, that's teacher empowerment, It can give you strategies to increase access to quality education. It can provide skill-based learning and all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, which is what is currently happening now, albeit in small blocks of the sectors that we're working in. There's much improvement in agriculture. I've seen the use of AI in healthcare. In Africa, especially in Ghana, where I think there's something called the Kwame for Science. And then there's something really going on in Malawi, and also in Kenya, there's this, they're beginning to introduce an AI curriculum into their learning instructions, which is really good. But at the end of the day, I do believe that you can't take away the essence of learning, of teaching and learning from the educators, the in-person educators. And so I would say that in order for us to, as we look to the future, or as we move into the future, in terms of incorporating or adopting AI, a few things to consider, infrastructure, investment in digital infrastructure, to be precise, accessibility to things like internet, partnership, government and public and private partnership, AI literacy programs also that can help our teachers and students, and also partnership with tech innovators, education stakeholders to sort of scale these AI solutions. And lastly, I also want to touch on the early grade teaching and learning, because as much as the whole AI is cool, I want to speak to foundational learning. If you can't take the human essence from foundational teaching and learning, I don't believe that children who are probably aged 5 to maybe 8, maybe above, they might start to find things cool. But if you're talking about children or learners who are growing up, and you take away that human connection, then I feel like at the end of the day, we're just raising robots and not, learners. So when we're talking about AI in education, it kind of now depends on the kind of the groups that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, you really can't take away the power of human creativity when it comes to education, AI or not. But I like AI, just saying. I hope I don't sound like someone that doesn't like the tool. Thank you.
So we absolutely do love AI. I mean, I think I speak for everyone here. And speaking of speaking for everyone here, I think that we can all agree that there are some very stand out points that all our panelists seem to agree on. I think one thing that's clear is that we need to also, well, not just also, first of all, prioritize infrastructure that is in many ways equitable, especially because we are in sub-Saharan Africa. That is, and it's very difficult to say, but it's behind in every aspect that you need to make AI work, around technology-wise, electricity-wise, speed of internet-wise. Many things need to be put in place to make sure that if we have AI interventions, these brilliant ideas that we're speaking about, they are not just in the Chrislands and in the Calebs and in the big schools, but also accessible to the public schools that hold majority of our population. We hear very well from Destiny that AI can help administrative speed and efficiency, and I agree. There are many tools that can speed up the process of teaching for a teacher. If it takes away the whole lesson note planning, all those basic tasks sometimes that a teacher spends 30 minutes doing before they can then spend 20 minutes to teach 100 students. Lots of that sometimes take away the efficiency of teaching. I like the fact that everyone agreed that AI can help with personalized learning for you as the child. And because AI is powered by machine learning, of course, it can learn over time about a child and could give two separate interventions to two different children in the same class that speed up learning for both of them at the pace or meet them where they are, which is something very important. And I think that our panelists are going to deep dive into that very soon. I love what Jude said about AI is not here to take the jobs. It's here to assist. It's like a co-pilot. You see what I mean? And you can't put humanity inside the computer. What I just was going to add to that was, and I like that he implied that in many ways, is that AI also serves, and machine learning also serves as a way of learning. You as the system, you as the teacher, you as the school, you as the government, if you have AI tools in the classrooms, over time, you learn more efficient ways of teaching children. So the children aren't the only one learning. The system is learning better ways to teach children, which is also very important because the tool, whether it exists or not, doesn't just suddenly know the best answers. We have tools in classes because we also want to learn better teaching practices, better learning practices, improve our knowledge on the science of teaching, and more. And then Zima spoke about emotional intelligence, the human parts, imaginations, the things that we can't take away from human beings. Those are very important factors that must always be in front of the conversation because when we speak about human beings, we have a lot of them here, in Africa. By 2050, 68% of the global workforce is going to be coming from here, right? So many people are here. And that's so much potential. Also a problem if you can't use AI and things like that with these human beings. They then become people who react to AI, not people who make AI react. And we don't want that. I'm staying on the topic of human beings and going to our first objective with our panelists today. We want to talk about how we can sustain that human element in teaching and learning despite the advancement of technology. Because we're also at risk of, numbing the human elements if we only keep AI at the forefront of the conversations. And I'll start with Zima. In a world that is increasingly dependent on AI and tech, and I think you already were beginning to touch on this, what unique human characteristics remain very crucial for the future of education? Despite AI's advancements, what are those crucial things in human beings that we need to keep crucial, for the future of education? Over to you, Zima.
Thank you, Santos, for that question. I would say just, continuing from what I was saying, you can't take the humans are looking more or less the heart of education. And so some of the characteristics I would say that are absolutely crucial for educators or what, are emotional intelligence and empathy. I don't believe that's something of course, the AI and AI tools could give you some key pointers on what to do, but it doesn't. It's not something that can be. It's not human, so it can't portray that sort of example in a classroom setting, for example. So there's emotional intelligence and there's empathy. There's the critical thinking. There's ethical judgment. How we for example, if you're in a classroom and you pair learners together, there's this form of learning where the teacher is communicating with the students and then you're just bouncing off questions, learning from one another, engaging, correcting when something is wrong or when the student gets something wrong or right. Those kind of interaction and those kind of communicative platforms are what we should keep when we're thinking of the future of learning. There's also creativity, innovation, motivation. How do we motivate ourselves even? How do we motivate other educators? How do we motivate stakeholders in our spaces, in our work? Those are not things. Those are things that the AI may not be able to teach. We might get information from it, but it may not be able to teach. So those are very essential when we're talking of the kind of human characteristics that needs to remain as we move forward into an AI world. There's also mentorship and leadership. Teachers inspire students, honestly, and it goes beyond the classrooms. You have teachers who are still mentors to some of the students they've taught maybe way back 5, 8, 10 years ago, who they're still learning from, who they look up to as mentors, who they look up to for leadership advice. And then there's lastly, I would say the cultural and social context of each community, or each community that we serve. So education is deeply tied to cultural identity, values, tradition. And if these things are not fed into an AI tool, it's not going to give back. For example, if there's no AI tool that understands my ancestry, that understands how I lived with my family, or the essence of our values, if there's no AI tool that has that information, then it cannot be taught. It can only be taught or passed down to my other generation by me, who has that knowledge. And so we need to maintain our cultural and social context as we're looking or moving forward in the education space. Thank you.
Thanks, Zima. There's so much to take from that, emotional intelligence, empathy, critical thinking, keeping students motivated. Lots of these human factors that just need to stay in a life, that need to stay alive rather, in a world that, you wake up to really terrible news every day. And so you could have all the basic literacy, numeracy skills sometimes. And if you don't have emotional intelligence, empathy, critical thinking, you still build a world where people think it's necessary to bomb each other. You see what I mean? So I really agree with you, Zima, here that those are very critical factors. You mentioned the cultural and social context, also very important. Earlier, DAL-E had serious problems uh, recognizing or creating content that was of African people because it wasn't trained with enough black data. You see what I mean? So there's also that factor. We have to make sure that AI is balanced enough to cover all cultures and contexts. And then you mentioned teachers as inspirations, and you just can't take away that human factor. Speaking about teachers, I'm going to move to Destiny. Jude had said something very important earlier, that AI wasn't coming here to take the jobs of teachers. And so, Destiny, in what ways can AI now support, teachers rather than take their job? What ways can it foster critical thinking and creativity within African context while supporting teachers? Over to you, Destiny.
All right. Thank you, Santos, for the question. And I would say panelists have done justice to some of the reasons we feel that AI is going to support teachers and going to support learning. Jude has mentioned some very amazing things, and so Zima. I'd like to add that aside the administrative tasks, the personalized learning, the tailored learning, and
So while we wait,
somewhere.
okay.
Come again?
So we had lost you
Pardon?
for about 30 seconds. You had
Oh,
a bit of the infrastructure problem we were talking about earlier. So would you just go over it again? Sorry. So I think Destiny has a bit of a network issue. So we'll just quickly jump to Jude while we wait for Destiny to get ready. Jude, how can we, what safeguards are needed to ensure that
yeah.
education remains
Hello?
human-centered?
Okay.
We'll get back to you very soon, Destiny. While we fix up the internet over there. I just wanted you to quickly jump on something. What safeguards
Okay.
are needed to ensure that education remains fundamentally human-centered? Like a human-centered experience here in
Okay.
Africa, because of our societies are so diverse.
Wow. Okay. I remember you were saying Dali don't have African representation in terms of images, and that goes all to text to images, text to images platforms. you type a text, maybe you write, generalize it, schools, children, and you find that it's always bringing white children on. Then till you start saying black, or you start describing, which is somehow painstaking. But generally, there are areas AI cannot touch, I believe. Even if we have to generate data in Africa, our culture is so diverse and so rich that I don't think there's enough AI models to be trained in that areas, like our languages. You find that in Nigeria, 500 languages. How many languages can AI speak at the moment, right? So it means in Nigeria alone, we have more languages than the rest of the world. In Nigeria alone, we have more languages than the rest of the world. So AI has not been trained in those areas, and that should be our advantage as humans, or as teachers, or as educators. That should be our advantage. AI cannot touch, or AI has not been able to replicate non-verbal communication in classroom. From the body language, the social distance, the touch, the voice tones of every language, the eye contact, the facial expression, and also posture and movement. I think those are rich aspects that what makes us humans. And even if you have to, like some schools are experimenting in UK to train AI to teach students without teacher. It's no different from just going online to a YouTube video and just start watching videos without anybody teaching you, right? Or just reading websites without anybody teaching you. So there's too much human element in education and teaching and learning that AI cannot replicate, or AI cannot replace. And except, like you agree, if except you are trying to turn people into robots or learn without emotion or empathy or feelings, then that might be what we are trying to, dystopian future we're trying to create for in Africa. But I believe in Africa, as at the moment, AI can scale a lot of teaching and learning processes, like your lesson plan, and even up to lesson observation, right? Now, I was working on a project where you can actually record a video of a classroom, and AI will analyze and tell you what's happening in the classroom, and who should be engaged, and how the teachers can actually help in group work and all that. So that's, I believe that is a good use of AI, right? Analyzing scenarios, analyzing classroom scenarios, and making suggestion based on what data is available to it if concerning that classroom. That we also have cases where uh, because of the language barrier, not everybody speaks English, and because we don't have enough voice option in terms of languages for in AI, automatically it means those children in the rural area, or in maybe areas that they speak their normal language, they cannot use AI automatically. That's what it means. And that's a disadvantage in those areas in terms of using AI to enhance their learning or speech or literacy level. And that is one focus of UNESCO, to increase literacy level in mother tongue, right? So since most of our languages in Nigeria are not AI driven, except maybe the popular one, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. Definitely the other languages or minor languages are not represented. And that needs to be taken into consideration when we are driving AI to different parts of Africa or to different parts of Nigeria. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jude. And you made some very strong points about, first of all, just to allay the fears of anyone who thinks that AI can just immediately replace the human being. It's not, there are too many things that, there are just too many things that it just can't take, it can't replace, the posture, the lesson plan, the verbal hand signals, the diversity of our tones, things like that. Um, And staying on you, Jude, I apologize, Destiny, I'll come to you. How do you think AI can then help the teachers, from your experience, because you've been in this for a while? How can it help the teachers without taking away or without highlighting so much those disadvantages that it does have because it
Yeah.
can't replace them?
Yes. Okay. AI can help majorly in different aspects of the lesson planning. For example, uh, take for example, you're trying to teach in a rural school where there's no internet, they just have cardboard and maybe chalk and that. So those kind of contexts, you can see AI can help a rural teacher maximize the use of that particular lesson material, right? For example, now we thank God we have the AI that works offline, right? Like the GPT for us and Olam and all that. So we have AIs that work offline. So those AI can be deployed to rural areas or to areas where they need AI without internet connection. And maybe with solar panels and all that, and maybe a mesh network and simple logistics can actually make AI work in those areas where they have no electricity or internet connection at all. Because now you can deploy your AI offline. Definitely, teachers in those areas will need AI to help them maximize the use of their learning resources, the little they have, right? Since they don't have more, even if it's cardboard, paper, wood, or sticks that they need or they can afford as their teaching material, AI can actually help in maximizing those or giving suggestion in which teachers can teach specific subjects or specific topics in those areas.
Well, that's very helpful. And I know that if I give you all the time, you probably give me like 20 more examples of ways that can work. Just to add to what Jude had said, other ways that we can safeguard and fundamentally keep the human experience in our diverse African societies is to be very involved in the building in the first place. The human beings that are involved in the building of the AI tools have to be trained to not just be ethically conscious, but to be human conscious. And then our education systems have to prioritize training human beings to be human, so to speak, in the sense that the AI tool, like Zima had said, is never going to take away critical thinking or add, so to speak. But you must prioritize critical thinking as an important factor of your education system. So I'm speaking at the systems level now,
Okay.
at the government level, the policy level,
Policy
emotional
level.
intelligence, SEL. Those must be factors that you put at the front. AI should not define your strategy should be supported by AI. And not to be the panelist here, I'll move to Destiny because who's back? His infrastructure is fixed, is raring to go. Destiny, I had a question for you earlier. In
Okay.
what
Okay.
ways can AI support rather than replace the role of teachers in fostering this critical thinking that I was just talking about? How can AI help foster critical thinking and creativity within the African context? Over to you.
All right, thank you, and apologies for the network. It's a bit very difficult here to get quality network. I'm in a very far remote staff this project, but however, some of the things I feel AI can do, like I said during the cutoff, interactive learning is very, very key. Situations like what we have done today at Autogon AI, where I work, we've deployed a lot of chatbot systems and virtual tutors to help encourage problem solving and creativity of people, right? The mind is vast, fine, but then there are a lot of chatbot systems that we build with global data sets that can help people think beyond what they can see, that can help them do some adaptive exercises and, do some gamified learning experience and just sort of, having that power to do more, right? And that's the best way to expand the capacity of children. I think interactive learning would help in deploying of chatbot system and virtual tutors. Another one that I think of which Santos speak brief about is people able to learn in multilingual African context, right? A tool where AI can translate a lot of languages into other learners. I remember a project we did in Kano, by World Bank. It was funded by the World Bank, and it was done in Kano, where a lot of people were, getting materials that, once you use your pen with a speaker to touch a particular word, it translates it to Hausa or any language that you want, right? It was a very good way for people to learn in English. It was a very good way for people far in the north to actually learn Yoruba. So enabling that multilingual African context, AI can help in doing a lot of those translation tools. And lastly, I think it's going to also help in encouraging some inquiry-based learning, right? In a world where a lot of case studies are available, talk about the university level kind of people, it helps them to do more research. It helps them to be very innovative with their solution. It helps critical thinking, analyze complex solution. Like, for example, I studied physics and electronics, right? The core physics of computation now helped me to do a lot of things, quantum computing. And at that length, I was able to deploy AI to do a lot of amazing things. And I feel by the time teachers are able to sort of create the ground for students to adopt AI in inquiry-based learning, to sort of expose them to a lot of real-world simulations, case studies that are very advanced, and it pushes them to analyze critical, complex systems. And yes, and I think it's here to stay. And just like somebody also mentioned, teachers cannot be replaced by AI because AI is the co-pilot, and teachers and educators are the pilots of the education system. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Destiny. I love the idea about gamification, and we could have a totally different webinar in itself about how gamification
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
can improve critical thinking in many ways, and interactive learning, like you said, which is very, very linked to it. I think that this seminar by TEP would be in March. I think that there's so much more conversations that we can have and take over to that seminar in itself, because there's too much that's just going to come out of this conversation in itself. Now, speaking about tools, Destiny, and I'm staying with you because your infrastructure is very solid right now. What are the most promising AI tools that can be used to advance teaching, learning, and assessment? Because it's one thing to say we want to use AI for education and etc., but we also have to be accountable. It has to improve learning. We don't want it
Yeah.
because it's aesthetically pleasing. We want to say that because of this tool, more children can now do this and that. So, Destiny, take us to church, please.
All right. So I would first of all give kudos to Google. Google have done amazing things in providing infrastructures that could help do a lot of assessments in the area of education, and particularly in Africa, talk about teaching and learning. Google has been very instrumental. And if you see Google Classroom, I just sometimes encourage educators and teachers to go to their Google Suites and use Google Classroom. It's very, very amazing. That's one tool you can use. You can use Google Read Along and Bolo app. This helps children to improve literacy using AI voice recognition. It's a very amazing tool as well. Talking about the learning again, there is a Kenya-based AI-powered learning platform that delivers SMS-based interactive learning for students in mostly remote areas or underserved areas, right? And today we have a whole lot of platforms. Currently, back to Nigeria, we have Edverse, we have Mumbango, that deploys a lot of AI tools to AI systems to deploy quality learning. And for assessment, Querium is a very good tool. I know a couple of guys in Lagos that use Querium. It uses AI to provide real-time feedback for students, most especially in science, technology, engineering, mathematics subjects. Right, Querium is very good one. We have great scope is also another amazing tool. And at Multiple AI as well, we have developed tools that are tailored to your specifics, right? In the area of providing learning management system and also for assessment and feedback, we can understand your operation of your school and suggest one or two tools that we feel can be quick of adoption to you, and you can already begin to use it in your school curriculum or your school activities, right? So you might not want to dive into the already existing tool, but again, you need to understand your process, you need to understand your administrative activities in-house, and reach out to any educator or expert out there to help you design a tool that you can adopt, tailored to your specific operations or your administrative tasks. And yes, there are a lot of tools out there, but then you can design some that are tailored to you. And that is the beautiful thing about AI. Thank you, Santos. Over to you.
So that was quite helpful, Destiny. And I think everyone agrees with me that even I and many of us hadn't heard about some of these tools. What that tells you is that lots of work is happening to improve learning outcomes in schools, and that we just need to put our eye out there and stay in touch. I also think that at the end of this webinar, because I know that people would want it, we could get lots of these interesting tools from Destiny and share maybe with the newsletter as well that follows this. So everyone can also go and have a look at them. Moving to Jude, and we have 25 minutes left for this conversation. So we would, you know, rush things up a bit. Moving to Jude, how can AI-driven platforms support continuous and inclusive assessment practices in a resource-constrained setting? We said some earlier today, I read somewhere, I think on the document here, that 70% of the children in higher income areas are already using AI tools. But that's not what we are. We're resource constrained setting. So how can AI-driven platforms support continuous, very important that it's continuous, and also inclusive? Continuous because you want to, in many ways, also have assessment-informed instruction included within the logic of your work. So over to you, Jude.
Okay, thank you so much. I like this question in the sense that it seems a lot of solutions are tailored for highbrow areas or areas with connectivity. Until recently, I started looking into areas without connectivity. How can we help them? And I kind of mentioned deployment of offline AIs and systems. For example, there's Colibri. It's an offline first platform. It's an offline first platform, and it's an LMS, right? You can check it out, Colibri. So that system, I looked at it, and it's very awesome that you can deploy it in a village with just servers. And there are cases where you have such rural areas without even devices. So if you can actually empower the teacher, just the teacher alone, maybe without constraint, with resource constraints for the student because of light and all that, you can actually also deploy tools like what we overlook, OneNote. OneNote is very powerful. I will advise us to go and look at one. OneNote, now it has a Copilot API attached to it. So OneNote could actually be used to collate students' learning profile, even up to their image, their writings, their voices for literacy and all that. So it's also a literacy tool which you can use to collate students' learning profiles and use AI to actually prompt and make recommendations and work on it, because OneNote also works offline. That is a good thing. OneNote also works offline. So areas where you have no lights, no, you need offline tools, and Colibri, OneNote, and even up to there's also a tool for assessments, ZipGrade. ZipGrade works offline. You can assess any number of students. I think they give you 300 student assessments every month. So you can assess up to 100 students with ZipGrade offline by just using their paper. It's like this Scantron technology where you use your camera to scan the paper, augmented reality, you scan the paper and it grades whatever you have. So because most of those areas, you need more assessment. You need more ways to digitize assessment. So automatically ZipGrade falls into that tool that can help give you proper assessment of paperwork from the children, and also with AI, they can actually analyze and give details about how you can help with learning interventions. Also tools that you can use offline. For example, you have the Microsoft graph API, which can be integrated to any of these tools to make it give AI feel or analytics for learners offline, even with limited internet connectivity. So it's a system that can work if it's properly channeled or is properly structured with proper strategy, that you can, a teacher on the rural area can teach online, offline, and when there's internet, it can sync and get to the database and analyze and all that. So even with offline AI tool, it can be analyzed locally without internet connections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very concise piece. I love that you said co-pilot. I think it goes under the radar a lot what co-pilots can do for you as a human being, and Gemini as well on Google. Google Classroom, amazing, Colibra as well. And again, I think that we would compile this list and share with everyone because lots of these tools exist. But I would just add that the tool is as useful as the user. So it's very important as well that we optimize to train not just children whom we're speaking about, but educators as well to have these same skills, this critical thinking, this emotional intelligence that we're talking about, analytical thinking, so that a teacher who has these tools in his hands makes the best use of it. Because in the hands of the wrong user, it's just still going to be Microsoft Copilot. And keeping that in mind, Zima, what challenges do educators in Africa now face when trying to adopt these AI technologies? How can we mitigate them? It's fine to highlight the strategy, the problems a bit more than the mitigation, because the next part of the conversation is going to speak about the reforms and the policies that we suggest. So you're over to you, Zima.
Thank you, Santos. I think for us, I mean, it's no secret that I think the very first and the key challenge that we're facing here in Africa or in Nigeria, even here at home, is our limitation to digital infrastructure. So you go to, as you mentioned earlier, the major amount, there's a lot of people in Africa, and so workforce is going to be, I think, 68%, you said, in the nearest future is going to come from Africa. And so if we don't start now to put in place these types of infrastructure that is needed to advance our education system, then we're going to have a big problem down the line. So there's the issue of digital infrastructure, ICT infrastructure. There's also the issue of low digital literacy among educators. So we find that many of our teachers here have very limited exposure to AI technologies. And I feel like sometimes people think it's a 50-50, but it's not a 50-50. We here and everybody in this room, I believe, is privileged to a certain extent to afford certain types of things, but there are millions and millions of teachers, of people in marginalized communities out there that don't have access to these things, and these are the people who would always be counted as part of our population. And so if we don't do something about how to reach those groups of people, then we will still end up having or recycling the same problems that we've always had. And then there's also the issue of high cost of AI tools and software. There are some tools that, I mean, I love the fact that Jude has pointed out some awesome tools that are free and that work offline. That's fantastic. In fact, now I'm thinking, as he was speaking, I was thinking of how to invite him to collaborate on our teacher professional development capacity building forum and just designing like an AI module for our teachers, because we have some of them on our platform where we support teachers. And so that would really be great for, those kind of teachers that we've started to help in terms of advancing their teaching and learning strategies. So there's the cost of, so that might be one solution to high cost of AI tools and software. And then there's the resistance to change. I'm not sure how we can. I think this one might be a cultural solve. And thank God Santos has said I shouldn't speak on the solution because I'm not sure how. The next speaker would be put on the spot to speak on how. But we know that a lot of our people are resistant to change. I mean, we've seen it in our programs, we've seen it in terms of lesson planning, we've seen it in terms of how to teach how classrooms these days should be taught, where a teacher just wants to run through the curriculum regardless of the level of the children, where the children are at, which is why we do our remedial programs, to teach children from the level they're in and not just, lumping them as a whole class. So that's also an issue. As much as AI is new, we've made significant efforts into incorporating it into the education, but we have a long way to go. So those are some of the challenges that would be that I would say are present now. All right, thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Zima. I think you encompassed many of these when you said limited digital infrastructure. It cuts across every level, from internet infrastructure to electricity to know-how to devices, etc. And of course, cultural resistance. Cultural resistance and cognitive dissonance in humans is mostly very normal, when things like this happen. We know people who many years ago didn't think that televisions were cool or were demonic, who are now live streaming um, church programs. So the world will adapt. I mean, we can speed it up in our ways, but no offense to anybody in the house, yeah. But speaking of, how do we then fix this? Because we can agree on something. When there's political salience and will at the top, these problems can be fixed faster. When the government, the policymakers, the Ministry of Education, the school leadership, everyone looks in a certain direction, these things can work. We have said if you read it, the World Economic Forum had a report earlier this year on the future of work, and they say 70% of the future jobs will be AI dependent, right? 70% of the future jobs will be AI dependent. But AI is just a tool in the hands of a human being, isn't it? Speaking of human beings, I repeat that this same future we are talking about, 68% of the global workforce growth will be coming from sub-Saharan Africa. So those tools and those jobs that are AI dependent need human beings from here to be very prepared. We need the children to be prepared to not just be creators of the tools, but to be users of those tools and to critically think when to use those tools. So they're not just people who react to AI, like I said before, people who AI react to. Keeping that in mind, what kind of reforms in the education sector, do you think that our policymakers need to prioritize and highlight very well? There've been comprehensive national AI strategies in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. Leadership in Rwanda and Mauritius have done some really good work. Yeah, but I mean, there's still so much to do. So we have less than 15 minutes to go. I would urge everyone to drop your questions in the Q&A sessions because after our panelists are done with this round of questions, we will then look at the questions um, within the Q&A panel. So over to my panelists, I would start with Destiny. What are these brilliant thoughts and policies you have in mind in line with, for example, the UNESCO AI competency framework for teachers? There's this need for ethical, responsible AI. So what reforms are necessary in Nigeria and Africa, for example, to ensure that we use AI ethically? Yes, over to you, Destiny.
Oh, sorry, I was cut off from the internet because I was asked to turn my video. Apologies. So, the reforms you want to talk about the policies and regulation, and thanks to the Minister of Digital Economy in Nigeria that is moving our front for the National AI Strategy Framework. I was still at the meeting they had with the key stakeholders across public and private sector. It's a great move, and we've gotten some international people, buying into that particular idea. So one thing is a policy and framework around how our current AI strategy and policies or governance framework can align with the UNESCO AI competency framework for teachers. That document is comprises of every sectors, and I think that key alignment, making it clear, making it transparent and focus on that regulation is going to be very, very sustainable for that sector. And that's where I think the reforms should start from. And also talking about data privacy law. In Nigeria, as we have today, there's always a case for data theft, data's lack of protection, regulation, and safeguarding of students' data, teachers' data, and misuse of all of those elements of data. So we need to have a stronger data protection regulation too in Nigeria, whereby you can't just see your data somewhere else, right? So that reform is very, very important as regards data privacy. We also talk about teachers training and AI literacy. Teacher training for educators using AI is very, very key. And that's a key reform that can sustainably upscale the intervention of how we demonstrate the usefulness of AI in the education sector. Also, talking about the local AI content creation. These things are very key. And also checking for bias checks, right? In all fairness, AI sometimes can be very biased. I remember during the US election, questions were asked about Donald Trump. It was ignored. Questions were asked about Kamala Harris, which was even using an AI chatbot system. So it doesn't, in all fairness, pass the check. So we need to be very ethical AI. We need to be responsive to our AI. We need to have those biases checked, the fairness checked. And that's how I feel that's the point we can begin to have a framework that is sustainable and that works according to the alignment of the UNESCO. And lastly, community engagement is very key. AI policy should not just be created from one point. It should be created in collaboration with teachers, with students, parents, with all the key stakeholders around the education sector so that we can have a view education needs that is fit into making sure that the AI policies and regulations are intact, the biases and fairness are checked in place, and everything is being done in all excellence. So yes, those are the things that I feel that the reforms that should take place. Yeah, over to you, Santos.
Well, I'm happy you spoke about ethics. Happy you spoke about data privacy laws and the constant bias checks. It's important that our policymakers, when making these policies, drive in the front of everyone's mind or at the back of everybody's mind that this has the potential of being biased. We need to constantly check that it is staying within the lines or confines of equity, it's ethical, because it's made by humans. AI is designed and fed by the data it's given, and so there's always that risk, and we always have to keep it within the middle. We don't have much time. I love what you said about community engagement. I absolutely agree. Speaking about the community that makes this thing happen, the teachers, the learners, the policymakers, Jude, how do we drive AI literacy among these people so that we can foster the development of our human capital in readiness for the future? How do we drive AI literacy within this community? Because they are important.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll look, I'll look to the general problem we are having now in terms of malpractice. Yeah, I don't think there's any there's any policy as at now in Nigeria or maybe Africa where there's a malpractice clause where using AI for malpractice for students, teachers, and all that. So that needs to be the first to put in place, because we have issues in other parts of the world where schools without policies, you can't hold the students responsible if they use AI, because you didn't where there's no law, there's no sin, right? So automatically that calls for proper adjustment to our malpractice, exam malpractice, especially exam malpractice laws and policies. And also, aside that, because I've worked with students with AI, but I've found that they are not just interested in some aspect of AI, which we adults are productive to us, right? For example, you have generative text, right? AI that generates text. Why will a student need generative text? Most times it's just for that same exam malpractice. Quickly get my homework done, quickly ask ChatGPT. They don't care about text to generative text. But when I found out that children are more interested in that generative image, right? AI generative, which are the creative parts, which can actually help students brainstorm scenarios with using prompts, right? Generative image, generative audio, generative AI that makes music from prompts, AI that makes videos, AI that makes 3D animations and all that. So these are creative parts which we can engage students with. But for the generative text, I don't, for now, there are not enough laws to tailor it for students aside uh, usefulness to teachers, right? But maybe the AI tutor and all that, like the Khan Academy version they have. But I believe for now, we need enough rules and laws to govern exam malpractice because it's going to be cheating if some students pass with AI while some other students trying to be good students are left behind or do not benefit from that same process. So other aspects of AI we can actually make policies on generative text for creativity, generative images, what they call it, generative, not generative text, sorry, generative images, generative videos, 3D, audio, and all that. So these are multimedia areas in which AI can benefit students and teachers too.
So very helpful, Jude. I found it funny when you spoke about exam malpractice and the use of AI. I think that there would have to be a middle ground inadvertently about how we can get students to still use AI without necessarily depending extensively on it, use it for self-improvement, in many ways, because that's going to be the end game. It's inevitable that, AI will be a part of your learning process. So we will also need to then find those blurry lines and middle grounds from where AI is not helping you learn, just helping you pass, because we don't want people who pass without knowledge. So there's so much in there that we would need to go into over time. Zima, World Economic Forum says again that out of every three employers by 2030, two of them want to hire talent with AI expertise. Out of every three, two of them want to do that. How can education systems in Africa prepare learners for this reality? Can you give us that information in 1 minute?
Oh, okay. Well,
Without AI, of course.
Yeah, I would say that it's very important, and I think the onus is on the education systems in Africa to prepare our learners on how to remain competitive, so to speak, in the global workforce. And a couple of ways to do that. But I want to speak to promoting STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and problem solving in the education space. And I say that as I'm starting with that particularly because if it's the only thing I can mention here, I want that to be it. Particularly with mathematics, especially when you're thinking of foundational literacy and numeracy or foundational education, because today we're having a conversation around one of the programs that we're working in, which is error analysis in numeracy. Just, trying to understand the common errors that children make when they're tackling numeracy questions and supporting teachers on how to develop strategies to, mitigate those errors that children have in numeracy. And then one of our country partners mentioned that one of the things that they're doing or including in the program is a gender, they're including gender into it. What that means is you're trying to understand so who does better Is it do boys do better in math than girls? So they're trying to understand it in that program as well. And then another of my colleagues mentioned that she was about to go into the university and she put in for engineering, and most people around her had a good laugh, meaning because, and everybody was like, oh, maybe 70% of the people were like, oh yeah, right, good luck with that, because of the notion that engineering is a boy thing. And so I think that, just going forward, looking into the future, it's important that we kind of shift away from that stereotype or that bias, and then improve learning for all. So a key focus on STEM education for all children, for all learners is very important. And of course, increasing access to AI learning resources, like I said, the ones that are free and even the ones that are not free, for those that can afford it, or for the ones that could be subsidized rather, for teacher learning platforms will also be great. And then upskilling teachers in AI and emerging technologies is also another key way that we can prepare for an AI driven future. Let me stop there. Thank you. You're on mute, Santos. Sorry.
Sorry. These are the skills that we're talking about, learning to unmute yourself. I agree with you, Zima, that if we don't take anything from this conversation today, STEM understanding, those sometimes basic numeracy skills form the building blocks for every other layer of understanding, AI, STEM, etc. When we say that people should prioritize foundational learning, it's not a trade-off for advanced learning. It's a sine qua non. You need this for that. It flows into that one. And even if you were a numbers person, 4 out of every 10 people in sub-Saharan Africa are under 13. So if you were to choose a particular population that you're going to be meeting the majority of people learning at the same given time, then you're speaking to the majority when you target children who are 13 and below, because they are the majority. They're going to be the majority of the population by 2050, by 2035, and all these numbers. So STEM education is something I take, very strong from Zima's intervention. We are right on time, even if we are 2 minutes after. But we do have about 10 minutes to take questions. Our panelists have loads of questions in the Q&A. Great questions I'm seeing here. I'm going to pick some of them randomly. And also, I'm going to randomly select a panelist to take it because not many of the questions aren't specifically directed at anybody. Well, please feel free to also take the questions, my dear panelists. I would say one question here I find, very first question I'm seeing is, okay, I think it's been covered, but let me try. What are the basic tasks that teachers can do with AI? I think I should give this to Destiny. What are those basic quick tasks in maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds? Can you quickly touch on that, Destiny? What are the basic tasks that teachers can do with AI within the classroom today? Oh, I think we lost Destiny. So Zima, can you quickly touch on that question? I think Destiny's internet has done it.
Yeah, I just got back now. Apologies, I just got
Oh,
back.
welcome.
Yeah. But I didn't get your question. Maybe Zima should go on. I will take your other question you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, Santos, come again. What was the question?
So I was saying, what are those basic tasks that teachers can do with AI right now within the classrooms? 4 or 5 of them that you can just quickly touch on so we move to the next questions.
I think so right now, teachers they can be able to do a couple of the administrative tasks rather. They can also get support from for lesson planning. And even if it's earlier, I think we talked about personalized learning, right? So if teachers can get access to any of the free AI tools or platforms, they could easily be able to devise lesson plans, create strategic lesson notes for specific children, specific learners. They can even use it as a learning platform for themselves to improve their own capacity. Asking professional or peer learning questions like how to design strategies in the classroom, how to present subjects better to my students, how to perform, how to get better performance out of students in the classroom, and a few of the administrative tasks. I know some AI tools that are also free in giving, I mean, even online, you can get free tools like of how they can keep administrative how they can use administrative tasks like attendance, journaling, just writing down how their students are performing in the class daily performance, managing their time management. And, those are just a few things that the teachers can actually use right now. Like saying if there's a teacher here today that wants to start using, that has access to any of these free AI tools and wants to start using it today, those are some of the things that you can do, that they will be able to do that would really bring value into their practice.
Thank you. Thank you, Zima. I think that you hit the nails on the head there with that response. I wouldn't go much into that because I want to also take as much questions as possible. Someone said, an anonymous attendee, we have limited access to digital infrastructure. That's one thing. But how do you address teachers' slowness to adopt new technologies? How do systems, head teachers, school districts support the use of these technologies? Jude, or I mean, Destiny, if you're back, can you take this? I can support the response with that as well.
All right, thank you. That's a very brilliant question. The slow adoption to these emerging technologies sometimes is a problem, right? And one ways, and I will give it for a story that, except we are strict, right? I'm speaking from experience deploying a particular solution to healthcare workers in the last mile. Um, the tool was working for a time. They were using it because they were getting some incentives. They were getting stipends for using the tool, just so we can create that sustainability framework as to supporting them to patronize this particular tool. But at the time the money stopped coming into their pocket, into their bank account, they stopped using the tool and it died. Spent over $100,000 developing that tool with funding from the international development companies, and that platform died. So it's very difficult to allow teachers to adopt this tool for them to use it continuously in a long term. Talk about the 5 years term or the 10 years framework, long term adoption of the tool. It's going to be very, very difficult. So I usually advise the government to be very strict, set some very strict strict consequences of still not using this tool, right? It's just like you're going to a school without no chalkboard or no marker to teach, right? It should be part of the system until the government are able to create frameworks or supporting structure that make strict enforcement of this adoption. That's the only way it can be sustainable. Because sometimes, trust me, if you let these guys just do it willingly, they won't adopt it. This is speaking from experience deploying an health solution. And I feel we need to make it very user friendly. Anything we want to adopt, we want to try and penetrate into the last mile learning school, because by the time we are trying to think of a solution, we need to think about the internet infrastructure, power infrastructure, and all of those challenges that could, break that adoption model. But then, because we need to provide supporting structure to help these people adopt, and again, very strict policies as to the quick adoption of those things and majorly focusing on capacity building. And sometimes for the first time using the product, there should be some incentives for these people to adopt. And I think that would be the best way to go. Yes.
Okay.
Over to you, Sam.
No, no. Thank you so much, Jude. I hear you. I've been in the field. We've seen these problems. One thing I would like to add to what you said is that we should design tools that listen to the teacher, in the sense that we should design tools that are
Yeah.
solving a problem that the teacher cares so much about. I've had experience with somebody who built a very strong ed tech person who built a tool for teachers in a high income country that was going to help them improve on tasks that improve on tasks that help a teacher with many students, if you get what I mean. It was a fantastic tool. But if you're bringing a tool to help me when I have 20 students in the class, I'm not going to adopt it because you haven't necessarily met a business need for me at the very moment. But then if a teacher has 120 students to deal with and there's this tool that helps him do lesson plans, groups all of them, sets up tests for them instantly, now you're fixing a problem that the teacher cares about. So I think that also a lot of surveys that are built based on the feedback from teachers would improve the chances of teachers adopting those technologies. I mean, there's obviously those teachers who would also be slow in the first place, but we should also start from listening to understand as opposed to assuming that we know the exact problem that they need. Richard asked the question here, are there AI tools that aid in teaching students with disabilities, such as blindness, being deaf, etc.? Yes, there are. I know of Seeing AI. Seeing AI is a free app that helps students see the world, so to speak. I don't have many off the top of my head, but I also agree with you that this is an important area that we need to look at. Tools that would help people with disabilities. 1 in 4 human beings have some kind of disability. 1 in 4. That's 25% of your population. It could be mental disabilities, it could be physical, but we cannot ignore that population in a world that is moving, very rapidly in technology. But I mean, Jude, do you know any other extra tools, Destiny, any other tools like that that help?
I will pass the mic to Jude. Jude, over to you, please.
Okay, yes. There are several tools that, even basic tools on your phone, text to speech or speech to text. I know of, I used to have a blind, will I say blind, or I think partially blind friend, and her tool is just her Android phone. What she does, once she buys a new Android phone, she just customizes it for her needs, and it works. The phone starts talking on anything you click on, anything you touch. It reads text messages, it reads um, uh, even caption, audio captioning on videos and all that. So it makes it possible for those who with listening or sight disabilities to make use of AI or those tools on their basic phones or laptops.
No, that's very helpful, and I'm sure that we could also, with the communication that comes after this webinar to all attendees, include some other things that are um, working right now in the system. I would take one more question because we should end this by 5 p.m. and then move to the other part of the webinar, final part of the webinar. And I apologize if we haven't taken your questions. I think that all questions have been taken down as well, and maybe we could also, the panelists could respond to them through the said communication that comes after the webinar. I'm just going to randomly pick one. Okay, so I think many of these questions have been answered, to be honest. And someone has asked the question specific to a project, but I can't say that I can fully understand that question right now. It says, I have a question. I have a project I thought about, but there's no context on the project. It will greatly improve performance of students in Nigerian universities by 40%. There's also no context on how that number was achieved. But when I asked ChatGPT the resources I would need to achieve my project, it says AI, ML, and database APIs, but I currently don't have knowledge for for this field, how do I go about it? I would recommend that you reach out to Jude, Destiny, myself privately about that. Maybe we can offer some insights. Many of the questions have been answered, to be honest. So we can just rewatch the webinar to get responses to our questions, because all the questions I'm seeing here have already been addressed. With that in mind, I'll hand over to Zeno and thank everybody for joining. Thank my panelists for being so insightful. This was
Thank you,
so
Santos.
interesting to do here.
Thank
Good
you
one.
so
Thank you,
much.
Santos. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yes, bye.
Very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was such a powerful session, and the conversation was super insightful. I think the message is clear and very powerful at that. It is a necessity. AI has become a necessity, and it is no longer something that we can put on the sidelines, right? Educators must become aware that artificial intelligence is a tool, and it has massive potential to redefine how we teach, learn, and access our learners, and if used professionally. So, wow, thank you so much, Santos. That was such a beautiful session. I would like to, if you know you enjoyed the webinar session, please drop your favorite emojis for our panelists. Let's tell them thank you for doing an amazing job today in the chat box. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. I can see someone's love emoji. Thank you. I see you all. I would like to thank every one of you for joining us today. Thanks to our lead presenter and all of our panelists. I would also like to acknowledge the members of the press who have joined us today. Thank you so much for being here. We would also like to hear your thoughts and feedback on this webinar, and we'd like you to click on the link in the chat box to be able to share your feedback with us. At TEP Center, we prioritize and we appreciate feedback, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And before we also wrap up, I would like to invite you to secure your spot for NEDIS 2025. NEDIS is one of Africa's leading education sector events. And this year edition is fully packed with insightful discussions, expert speakers, and groundbreaking ideas on skills development for workplace readiness and inclusion. I would like you to take a moment to click on the link in the chat box and on your screen and just complete your registration so that you can be a part of this and you don't miss out on this opportunity to shape the future of education. You can register also on www.tepcenter.com/nedis on our website. You can also learn more about our work and all of our other upcoming events if you follow us on LinkedIn at TEP Center, Twitter at TEP Center, and Instagram as TEP Center respectively. We are TEP Center across all media platforms. And if you'd like to have more information about the work that we do, you can check out our website, which is www.tepcenter.com, or you can send us an email to partner with us at info@tepcenter.com. I'm sure the information will be in the chat box. If you'd also like to join our community, to subscribe to our mailing list, to stay updated for when our next webinar is coming up and all of our other exciting events, there's a link in the chat box to join us and join our community. Once again, I am super, super excited that you joined us today, and I hope to see you sometime next month. Same time, same place. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us.